The recording has started now. And therefore I will start this meeting. Excuse me. Do we have any apologies for absence, please?
No apologies for members, Chair, but Councillor Penny Sharp just sent apologies for this meeting.
Thank you. Do we have any announcements from the head of paid service?
None, Chair.
And I have none either. Thank you. Are there any declarations of interest from members of the Cabinet? I will take that as no, and there's certainly none from me. Thank you. Minutes. You have before you the minutes of our meeting held on the 12th of December. Can I have a proposer, please, to approve them? Thank you, Councillor Brown. Seconder, thank you, Councillor Smith. All in favour, please.
It's carried, Chair. Thank you.
Councillor Wise abstained because she was poorly and absent from the meeting. Do we have any items raised by scrutiny, please?
None received, Chair.
Thank you. I move therefore to item 6, the future of the Park Special School, and I call on Councillor Smith, portfolio holder for Children's, to introduce this item. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I would first of all like to recognise that this is an emotive issue, and this is acknowledged in the report. The proposals are well laid out in a paper before you. There is also the results of the consultation and the conclusions of the independent reviewer. I will try and highlight the salient issues in the report. I think, as we all know, the Parks Special Nursery School is a maintained nursery school and supports children with moderate and severe learning difficulties, as well as support for speech, language and communication, autism and physical disabilities. At present, the children at the parks, less than 5, are reception age children, and therefore outside the age range that the parks is set up for. The number of children accessing the parks provision has declined over the last 6 years. There is a table on pages 8 and 9 that quite clearly shows this decline. It also shows that the parks has supported children through reception and even into year 1. There are no children accessing a special nursery place this academic year, and Rutland County Council is not aware of any children of nursery age needing specialist nursery provision from September 2024. This decline in numbers prompted a review for the Council's early years pathway. Was it either fit for purpose, or should there be a plan for a future delivery model? That review started in 2021 and was by a group of experienced independent SEND, special education needs and or disabilities professionals, which took place over 2.5 years. It identified that there were issues with the operational sustainability of the parks due to its size, scale and expense. The designated specialist provision, DSP, at Oakham CV Primary School provides additional educational support so that children's special needs can be met within a mainstream school setting rather than a separate special school. This is a national and local aim. Oakham CV Primary School designated special provision offered 20 places for children with educational healthcare plans whose primary needs are autistic spectrum disorder and moderate learning difficulties, but historically did not offer places for reception year children. From September 2023, a further 4 places of DSP were commissioned, and this now provides education from reception age to the end of year 6. It is intended that there will be a further 4 additional places from September 24. However, this will be compromised if the park remains open because the funding will be subsumed within the funding required to keep the parks operating. That funding is over £250,000 per year, and that would be the case even if there were no children in the parks. Additionally, the space currently utilised by the parks would be required to support the expansion of the primary DSP. So the options are: option 1, to continue with the current arrangements, but this would reduce the opportunity of young children to engage in educational, social and emotional offer access with their peers within a local mainstream early education setting. So option 2 is closure of the park's special nursery school end of summer term 2024. This would enable funding to be utilised more effectively to better meet the wider needs of children with SEND. This is therefore not a cost-cutting exercise, but a repurposing of monies. And this option would also be building on the already strengthening offer across the mainstream sector. In 2019, Rutland Schools Forum SEND Recovery Plan triggered development of the SEND and Inclusion Early Years Pathway. This improved early years pathway has invested in a significant programme of training and resources to promote inclusive practice across Rutland's early years, and childcare provisions give staff specialist skills to support children with SEND. They are supported by a specialist SEND early years teacher to support early years providers. From 2021, by a speech and language therapeutic senior practitioner and an early years specialist emotional and mental health teacher. The aim of this is to support children with emerging needs to thrive in a mainstream setting and not escalate into a more specialist support. These initiatives are already having a tangible impact on confidence in SEND practice for practitioners. There has been great feedback received from the Early Education and Childcare Survey, which was of 100 parents and carers completed in September 2023. Additional therapeutic support is planned for 2024. The therapeutic support is for children, and support will also be given to parents, carers and their families. This is all being backed up by the Ofsted CQC inspection in May 2023 that found that children and young people in Rutland benefit from an early and effective identification of their additional needs. This provides for the effective identification of any unmet needs. High quality inclusion support for practitioners in the early years provides them with the confidence to identify and assess children's needs. I would add, Rutland was only one of 4 local authorities to receive the highest grading. I would like to move on to the consultation. There was a public meeting held on the 1st of November. This was well attended. I also attended. The suggestion of an independent reviewer was suggested from the floor, and the Director of Children's Services agreed that it was a good idea. There were 80 respondents. I have read them all. These were reviewed by the independent reviewer. A parent carer herself. She has worked as a parent participation consultant nationally for a number of years, as well as being an associate of the charity Contact for Families with Disabled Children. She labelled or graded the respondents in 3 categories: green, a concerned citizen who may have some knowledge or experience of this complex issue. Amber, respondents has had a relationship with the parks, perhaps directly or indirectly, or Red, of which there were 10. The respondent may be directly impacted by any decision regarding the park's special nursery, or may have a solution which should already or has already been considered by Rutland County Council. She carefully analysed all representations and concluded that no viable alternative to closure had been put forward by respondents. A final report supports the proposal to proceed with closure of the parks and make more effective use of the wide-ranging resources available to families, such as Rutland's Family Hub, Early Help Service, and other education providers. I would like to read her conclusion. I think it's a very good summary and sums up nicely the issues. Closing any much loved and valued provision was always going to be a motive. However, on reading the responses, the large majority were talking about the experience of pupils who went to the park's special nursery school some years ago. There were only a very few who had current experience of the parks as it is now, and I feel more weight should be given to the responses of these people. It is my understanding that families of children who may have been candidates for the parks, as with all Rutland resident children who are identified as potentially requiring additional support, are currently being supported by officers of Rutland County Council while going through the education, health and care plan process. All those children have been recently diagnosed, and this will continue even after a decision regarding the future of the parks is made. This is a statutory process that all councils must adhere to. The recent local area Ofsted identifies that this is a successful approach in Rutland. I looked carefully through the responses and found nothing to indicate that the consultation was not done in a lawful way, or that there were any innovative solutions given or suggested to ensure that the situation in the parks should be changed. I'd just like to make some personal reflections on the responses. One of the ones that came through, a number of comments, that the officers and Rutland County Council in general is unfeeling and uncaring. In the few months I have been a portfolio holder for Children's Services, I've been impressed. The directors and frontline staff are sensitive to the problems that parents face. They strive to do their best that they can in the face of increasing demand and limited funding. They worked hard to obtain grants, and through those efforts we have the SEND recovery plan and the delivering better value. And as I've already mentioned, the Ofsted report certainly recognises this good work. Some of the comments are very heartfelt, and what comes across are the difficulties that families have, particularly the neurodiverse disorders. I can, to a certain extent, understand and emphasise that a child has disabilities on a family. One response stood out to me. The respondent commented, "I am old enough to remember babies born victims of thalidomide. I am also old enough. My sister was affected by thalidomide. She had the typical limb defects caused by the drug. Although I was young, I can well recall the distress and difficulties in the family, particularly for my parents. Despite her disability, she did well in mainstream schooling. Sadly, she died from terminal bowel cancer in her mid-40s. Behind the disability, and I accept that not all disability is obvious, there is a person and a family. Rutland County Council's ambition on SEND children, as stated in the report, is to focus on their abilities, not their disabilities. So in summary, Park Special Nursery is no longer viable to falling numbers. Due to falling numbers, I should say. There has been a significant increase in resources for early years provision, resulting in improved provision for SEND children. The money saved will be repurposed to benefit SEND children in the mainstream setting of Rutland schools. I would remind us that we are a corporate parent responsible for all children in their care. The recommendation is that Cabinet considers the outcome of the consultation and the feedback from the independent reviewer and approves the closure of the Park Special Nursery with effect from the end of the academic year, August 2024. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Smith has read the recommendation. Do I have a seconder for that, please? Thank you, Councillor Ellison. So the recommendation is made and seconded. Therefore, I can open the item to discussion and debate. Do I have anybody wishing to ask a question or make a comment, please? Councillor Wise, please.
It's made clear in the report that there are sufficient places in the mainstream setting for the children who would have otherwise gone to the parks. But as the children who would have attended the parks will require additional support to access mainstream, are there sufficient qualified staff in the mainstream settings to support them?
Councillor Smith, please.
Yes, thank you. The annual childcare sufficiency duty report, which is spring 2023, as you say, Councillor Wise, that we do have sufficient childcare places. There's 598 places apparently, but there are 238 vacant places, so there's plenty of room. There has been extra support. I mentioned that the speech and language therapy, the SEND early years teacher, the emotional mental health support, and as I also mentioned, this will continue into 2024 if the resources are forthcoming to support the children, families and carers. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments, please? Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Chair. I notice a repeated comments in the consultation, which is basically, has Rutland County Council in recent times made it more difficult for parents to actually apply for the parks?
Councillor Smith.
You will notice in the report from the lady who reviewed all the responses, she could find no evidence of this at all.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Councillor Johnson.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, regarding the financial implications, are there any circumstances in which the parks could be made viable?
Again, this came up in the respondents who gave some suggestions. One was, could the parks be used during the holidays and evenings as a holiday club to enhance provision in the area? Due to staffing issues and operational issues, the independent reviewer thought this was not possible. Could outside local authorities have access to the parks? It was thought that they would, there would be plenty of applications. In fact, there have been none. So I think that answers your question, I hope, Councillor.
Thank you. Anyone else? Thank you, Councillor Ellison.
Councillor Smith, it's something I'm very interested in and very detailed, but the one thing that I'm interested in is the evidence that SEND children do as well in mainstream. as they would be looked after separately?
Yes, it's a good question. I've emphasised that the mainstream setting would be good for children with SEND. And I have looked into it, and there are a number of studies an increasing number of studies that suggest SEND children do better in mainstream education. A 2020 study by the University of Cambridge, 2021 study by the University of Manchester, and 2022 study in the University of Oxford. So all august bodies. I could go into more detail, but that I think that should satisfy you with that answer. Thank you.
Very much. Thank you, councillor Smith. Any other comments or questions? Well, I'll make a comment then. A number of us will have felt some angst over the decision that we're going to be making on this, not just because of all the comments that we received from parents, carers and others to the consultation, which I know we've all read and thought about, but also because a number of us have got direct experience of living with children with special educational needs. And as Councillor Smith said at the beginning of his presentation, it's always emotive. It's emotive when you're dealing with children anyway, let alone those who've got additional needs. And we as a council have to be sensible in the use of public money, and what's before us isn't actually about savings, it's about redirecting resource to be more effective. But I think one of the most powerful arguments for adopting this recommendation is the last point that Councillor Smith has been speaking about, and that is the evidence that children do better when they are in mainstream education. And I think that more than anything else points to supporting this recommendation. It has been proposed and seconded. Reminder for those watching and listening, it is that Cabinet considers the outcome of the consultation and feedback from the independent reviewer and approves the closure of the Parks Special Nursery School with effect from the end of the academic year, August 2024. All those in favour, please.
It's unanimous, Chair. That's carried.
Thank you very much. Thank you. If residents who are in the audience have come for that item and wish to leave now, I'll pause for a moment to give you an opportunity to do that. If you're here actually to listen to a later item, then that's great, but entirely up to you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. We'll move on then to item 7 on the agenda, the corporate strategy refresh. Our corporate strategy was agreed in July 2022, following very extensive public consultation. The intention was always to revisit and refresh it, and the time is now right, having successfully delivered most of its commitments, and of course the change in political administration seen last May. We now need to focus our energies and resources on a new set of objectives, hence this refreshed corporate strategy. We are working in a very difficult financial climate, and the refreshed corporate strategy will help us to focus our efforts and resources on our priorities. At Appendix A, you will see the refreshed corporate strategy with revised priorities and objectives, and these in turn will be underpinned by a detailed delivery plan. There are 4 priorities. The first is tackling the climate emergency. And our recent flooding in Rutland demonstrates how important this is. And of course, it's an area that, as a council, despite motions supporting the need to tackle climate emergency, we haven't actually done anything about it yet. So putting it as a priority allows us to focus on it. Second is that we want a diverse and sustainable local economy. Then support the most vulnerable. And of course, we've just been debating how to best support vulnerable young people. And finally, providing good public services, which during the consultation was something our public emphasised over and over again. It's important to stay focused, hence having no more than 4 priorities, each of which is underpinned by 4 key objectives. The refreshed strategy also outlines the delivery programme and where targets will be set. I ask, therefore, that you recommend Council approve the adoption of the Corporate Strategy Refresh 2024-26. Do I have a seconder, please? Thank you, Councillor Wise. So as that motion is proposed and seconded by Cabinet, I open it to debate. Any comments or anything from anyone? Councillor Wise.
I think, as you have already mentioned, I'm pleased to see climate change included in our priorities. The last week has brought home to many more people the growing importance of directing resource at the issues related to climate change.
Thank you. Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to say that I'd like to endorse the way this has gone to having 4 priorities. It certainly takes the multitude of priority bases away, and I think it's a thrust that we were looking for in the public consultation, and it doesn't lose that context. So I think it's a very good way of proceeding.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Well, this has been proposed that we recommend council approve it. So we are not approving it. We can't. It's a council decision. It's been seconded, but all in favour, please.
It's unanimous, Chair.
Thank you. Moving on then to item 8, the integrated budget plan and medium-term financial strategy 2024-25 to 2027-28. Councillor Johnson.
Thank you, Chair. This item concerns the completed integrated budget plan for 2024 to 25 and the medium-term financial strategy for the 4 years from 24-25 to 27-28. It comes to Cabinet as part of Council's formal budget setting process as set out within the Constitution and as per the legislative requirements to set a balanced and sustainable budget for 2024-25 to 2027-28. It is a complex and technical financial document with many detailed appendices totaling some 180 pages. It is recommended that Cabinet approves this document as the basis for public consultation. The recommendations are shown in paragraphs 1.2.1 to 1.2.15, but I will not read out each point at this time. The purpose of the report is that it forms an important part of the Council's formal budget framework. It requires Cabinet to initiate and make proposals and update assumptions to set a balanced budget for the financial years 2024-25 to 2027-28. There is a legal requirement to set a balanced budget for 2024-25. The purpose of this report is to firstly recommend that Cabinet approve the budget proposals. Secondly, recommend that Cabinet approve the budget assumptions to update the medium-term financial strategy and to ensure estimates reflect the most up-to-date information available. Thirdly, to outline the financial impact of the financial challenges facing the Council in setting a balanced budget for the medium-term financial strategy period. Fourthly, to outline the strategic approach and actions taken by the council to deliver a balanced budget in 2024-25. Proposals agreed by the Cabinet at this meeting on the 11th of January will be approved for consultation, with responses received considered at Cabinet on the 13th of February. Final proposals will be recommended to Council on the 26th of February 2024 for approval. In terms of the process for this budget, a different process has been adopted this year, which represents a new process for Rutland County Council, and we believe it is much more transparent in its approach for residents. A key difference is the use of cash limits for directorates. This approach promotes ownership and problem solving by directors and their staff, where we've seen this year that heads of service act collaboratively rather than competitively, which is essential to making sure that a budget that contains a number of difficult challenges can be achieved. In summary, the council has been clear of its number one priority. It is outlined in the corporate strategy, and that is to be financially sustainable. This integrated budget plan and medium-term financial strategy puts the council on a firm footing to deliver on this priority. Whilst the plan relies on the use of £1.3 million worth of reserves for 2024-25, the budgets for future years are balanced against future estimated income and funding receipts. This is ahead of the timelines outlined in the financial sustainability strategy as approved by Council in November 2022. This is achieved by using less reserves to underpin the day-to-day expenditure in future years. This plan and strategy has been put forward with affordable service provision at the heart of its creation, ensuring that these services deliver the corporate strategy. The Council previously recognised that a transformational approach to how it delivers services was required. Previous medium-term financial strategies showed the Council was living beyond its means, with reserves being used to prop up day-to-day expenditure, which is not a situation that can be allowed to continue. As a result, this plan and strategy provides proposals that aim to deliver financial sustainability. Over the life of the medium-term financial strategy, it considers the following. Firstly, that budget pressures from rising demand for services and increasing costs from inflation and pay awards, alongside a reducing and uncertain future funding horizon worth £13.1 million. Secondly, the strategic use of Council's reserves to fund investment that will aid the delivery of future savings and more modern ways of working of £3.4 million. Thirdly, the strategic investment in Council fixed assets, i.e. the infrastructure and buildings, of over £43 million. Fourthly, for the first time, the inclusion of 14 financial health indicators that enable all members to understand past decisions on financial performance that influence on current and future financial prospects of the Council as drivers of expenditure and opportunities to create sustainable plans. Fifthly, it contains savings proposals based on the 12 transformation work streams where we plan to deliver some £4.6 million of savings. Funding and income remains very difficult. The recent provisional local government settlement announced by the Conservative government on the 18th of December last year means that the Council continues to be more and more reliant on council tax as its main source of income. Crucially, this settlement, announced at just over a 6.5% increase in funding for Rutland, includes the astounding assumption that all councils will raise their council tax by the maximum allowed, or 4.99%. So for Rutland, the value of the settlement is a net rise before any council increase of only 1.6% in an environment where inflation has been running at over 4 times this for most of last year. This sleight of hand by the UK government will mean that we have no alternative but to raise council tax by the full amount next year. It remains true that the council faces financial challenges, with early indications from government suggesting a return in future to the level of funding cuts last seen in the years of austerity. However, with this plan, Rutland County Council is taking proactive steps in its financial management and remains committed to keeping control of its destiny. ensuring services are provided in accordance with the vision held in the corporate strategy that is known as most important to residents and businesses. We remain committed to delivering excellent services to the most vulnerable in society and to deliver great community services alongside all the other services that make Rutland a great place to live and work, such as roads, transport, waste collection, and our statutory services that keep the community safe and well. This report is structured into 15 chapters of detailed information over a total of 180 pages, including the appendices. I do not intend to quote from all 180 pages this morning or read it all out. As all members of the Cabinet have been involved in the preparation of this budget since last July and are thus familiar with the issues, I would like to move that all the recommendations in section 1.2 of this report are put to the vote.
Thank you, councillor Johnson. I would remind you that the recommendation is that we approve this budget as the basis for public consultation. As we are required to consult on our budget proposals, but I'm sure we would want to in any case. And the rest of 1.2, so 1.21 through to 1.2.15 are the details of the basis for the consultation. Councillor Johnson's proposed. Could I have a seconder, please? Thank you, Councillor Brown. Having been proposed and seconded, I now open it to debate. Any questions or comments, please? Councillor Wise.
Could I ask Councillor Johnson to, excuse me, please explain the concept of cash limits that were applied to the directorates in a little more detail, please?
Thank you, Councillor Johnson.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yeah, the cash limits process is whereby in discussion, directors agree a cash limit that will be applied to their directorate for the year 24-25, and they agree that they will stick within that cash limit and provide all the services they wish to within that. So this tends to define the service ambitions and their ability to provide the services in a most efficient way. The reason is that what it's doing is allowing ownership of the process by the directors in a way that promotes collaboration rather than competitive grabbing of money, which tends to be a process which is very corrosive to corporate culture. So I think we've seen this year that this approach has worked very well. It's actually an approach I'm very familiar with in the commercial sector. So I'm very happy that we've adopted it. And I hope all the directors and all the staff would say they noticed the difference this year.
Thank you. The budget is ours as councillors. But that last point has been about how officers have responded to this new way of working. And I wonder whether the chief executive or any of the directors would like to comment. Silence from you all. Now, do I take that as being you haven't liked it or you haven't, Kirsty? You're not allowed to say. Thank you, Kim.
We found it a real positive experience, actually, having the cash limits structure around us. I would say that the budget holders in my directorate have worked together. So rather than kind of using the word grabbing, it was a case of working together as opposed to in isolation, where it was their budget, it is the whole service budget now, and they work together to look at transformation and look at how a delivery of service can be worked within that limit. But it also gives us a long-term view of our budgets. In past, it's been a very short-term annual reflection of budgets, which hasn't really enabled us to plan and be more proactive in how that transformation works. So it's given us freedom to plan an efficient budget and an efficient service over the course of 4 years. So for adults, it's been a positive.
Thank you. I think other directors are nodding in directors, sorry, are nodding in agreement, so thank you. I thought it would be helpful for us as members, though, to actually hear the officer view and indeed anybody else who's tuned into this cabinet meeting. As a former local authority employee, going back a good number of decades now, I think it's an approach that I would very much have welcomed in my time, and I was very pleased to see this approach. So thank you, Director of Resources, for helping us move towards this. Any other questions or comments from Cabinet, please? No? Well, we have had the recommendation to approve 1.2 as it appears on the papers to go to public consultation, and it's been seconded. So all in favour, please.
That's unanimous, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now we move on to item 9/10 on the agenda. That's essentially the contract award for the purchase of the required vehicles and associated transport infrastructure detailed within the Levelling Up Fund bid. The 9 on the agenda is the exclusion of the press and public. It is our practice to, wherever possible, hold these debates in public and not to exclude the press and public. So with that in mind, can I ask Councillor Wise to start the introduction, but remind everybody that if you wish to refer to the exempt items, annexes A and B, that you make that clear before you start speaking so that we can go into exempt if necessary.
Thank you, Chair. When I looked at this to prepare for today, actually the paper says it very well, so I'm going to do the naughty thing and read from it. At its meeting on the 12th of September, Cabinet approved the procurement of vehicles and associated transport infrastructure as set out in the Levelling Up project. Further to that report, at its meeting on the 17th of October 2023, Cabinet approved a new delivery model for the public bus network, which requires investment in new vehicles and associated transport infrastructure. Having done that, we now have to buy those vehicles. We make those two decisions irrelevant if we don't. The purchase of the fleet vehicles is essential for the delivery of the new bus network. Revenue savings identified in the review and in the budget document we've just dealt with will not be achieved if we don't have the new fleet vehicles and we don't have them on time. The purchase of the fleet vehicles supports the ambition of the council to reduce its impact on the environment through the use of electric vehicles where possible and develop a new public bus network service. You don't have to know me very long to know that I'm not a finance person, so I'm reassured that a robust procurement process has been followed, which has identified a winning tender that is most economically advantageous and meets the quality criteria required. What we're looking to purchase here are 11 minibuses. 8 of those are diesel and 3 are electric. And immediately we think, wait a minute, we've got a climate change thing in our corporate strategy. That is because the majority of our county is rural and we need diesel minibuses to serve the majority of the county. The town services in Uppingham and Oakham will be using electric minibuses. The third electric minibus is to allow us to trial using electric in more rural areas. The buses have been, minibuses have been specified as needing a D1 licence. I looked that up. And it's a special licence. You don't need it. You're not allowed to have more than 16 passenger seats, and the maximum length of the bus is 8 metres. So we'll have no extended bumpers, please. 8 metres. The majority of us would have a D1 licence. because we are not charging, you don't need a PSV licence to drive these buses. They'll be wheelchair accessible without removing the seats. And an important criteria is that they are delivered simultaneously within 18 months of the order, ready for immediate use. The small full specification size of headrests, etc., is in Appendix A. I do not intend going through that in any great detail. Appendix B is excluded.
Thank you. So the recommendation is to approve the award of the contract for purchase of fleet vehicles as detailed in the exempt appendix. Are you proposing that, councillor Wise?
I am indeed.
Do I have a seconder, please? Thank you, councillor Ellison. As it's proposed and seconded, I can now open it to debate. Any comments or questions? No. Well, I have a comment then, in that case. And I understood perfectly why we are going for 8 diesel and 3 electric. I think it is unfortunate that technology hasn't reached our expectations. Because it would be lovely if we could rely on a non-fossil fuel means of propulsion for all our buses. But as things stand at the moment, they're not providing us with sufficient mileage for the sort of mileage a rural area demands. So it's sad and it's not what we want, but we have to be realistic and we have to aim to provide the service first for our residents, because I'm pretty sure that if you live on one of our more remote parts, I hate to say remote in Rutland because we're so small, but the remote parts of Rutland, and you're regularly, the bus isn't turning up because it's run out of power halfway to your village, that you won't be chuffed. And nor should we provide a service with that type of risk. So I just wanted to make that comment, that it's sad but inevitable. And if councillor Wise.
To follow up on that, of course, the principle of public transport is that we would be carrying more people. So we may well be replacing 3 or 4 fossil fueled cars with 1 fossil fueled minibus, because not everybody is driving electric cars in Rutland. So the principle is we will still be reducing our carbon footprint despite using diesel minibuses.
Thank you. That's actually a very good point. And certainly when we did the Christmas free bus again last year, at the end of last year, I had quite a lot of feedback from residents saying we used it and we'd use the bus a lot more if there were more buses and we knew where they were. They weren't even particularly saying and they were free, but I'm sure that helped. But certainly, yeah, the point is very well made. Anything else from anyone? No? Well, as I say, the motion has been proposed and seconded. All those in favour, please.
That's unanimous, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I have not been informed of any items of urgent business, and the date of our next scheduled meeting is Tuesday, so we're returning to Tuesday's meetings, the 13th of February this year. Thank you very much. And I close the meeting at 10 to 11, I think it says. Thank you.